So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session. This is the cybersecurity chat. There we will be focusing on challenges and threats. And on this panel, I have got Paul Williams, Mr. Mohamed Roushdy, and Mr. Pradeep from Ecobank Group. So the methodology that we are going to follow in this group is that I will be asking 5 minutes to each of the participants to share his thoughts on the topic. And here it will be uninterrupted session. So once a person has completed 5 minutes, I will ask another panelist to share his thought. And after that, we will be taking questions from the chat box. So the question which will be taken from the chat box means it depends that who want to answer. And we will be finalizing this session based on a final message from the panelist, maybe a one-liner, maybe in the last 2 minutes. So to start with, I will request Mr. Paul Williams for the next 5 minutes, if you can brief us on the topic, the challenges and the threat related to cybersecurity. Mr. Paul Williams is from Fortinet, and Fortinet is leader in their area, and definitely they've got a lot of products and a lot of services. So Mr. Paul Williams, over to you.
Thank you very much. So thanks for having us, and thanks for being part of the panel. So for the next 5 minutes, I'd like to share with you regards to Fortinet's view on cybersecurity. So cybersecurity has come a long way where with regards to the types of attacks we're seeing on a daily basis have increased. What we're starting to see with network speeds increasing, we're going from 10 megabits to 100 megabits to 1 gigs now, and 10 gigs, 100 gigs. People that, the things we've got to be careful about here is those types of attacks happening at the same network speeds. So, when we talk about, the Fortinet technology, we basically pride ourselves in building our own ASIC technology. We build our own hardware. For this pure reason is that we realize that in the near future, and actually maybe even today, is that our technology has to support what the user or the human brain cannot do anymore. So these types of attacks are happening at network speeds of 10 megabits, about 10 gigabits per second, 100 gigabits per second. If it's a worm or it's a Trojan horse, or if it's basically a malware type of attack, these attacks are happening extremely fast. So computing and basically computing power is now being used to actually combat those types of cyber attacks. The second part of that element is obviously the intelligence. When we start looking at these types of attacks happening, is we have two strains of thought. We always have the thought of basically known attacks, which we obviously all aware of, but there's also a lot of these unknown types of attacks that are now taking place. When I say that is that we pride ourselves again on building what we call advanced threat protection. That said, inside our advanced threat protection architecture, we have built basically the unknown aspects as well, where we start pinning down the type of application or the user. We look at the information of the user, we look inside the application, we look at the basically even down to the code level of the application or the code level of the development, and we start finding things like backdoors. The code developers sometimes are, not to knock anybody, but they are quite lazy people. So basically when they do code development, they sometimes leave backdoors open, which allows these types of hackers and then basically users to come in and actually manipulate that environment and that service as well. And then over and above that is that the last component we now start priding ourselves on is that although we've had advanced threat protection, which we add things like honeypots, sandboxing, etc., we now start adding an element of artificial intelligence, because I think this is the third element that we talk about. And then artificial intelligence now brings us to allow the systems to start learning, understanding, and obviously repurposing themselves a lot quicker than the past. And that's the part. The learning part, I think, is the most important part, because the learning of the unknown has now become the aspect of what we are now seeing in cybersecurity space from Fortinet. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. And it was really very informative, and especially the area that you have mentioned about artificial intelligence. Yes, everyone is talking about. So that was a very important briefing on this one. And next, I will request Mr. Pradeep from Ecobank Group to brief us for next 5 minutes that what are your thoughts on this topic. Mr. Pradeep.
Yeah, I'm not currently with Ecobank. I was leading Ecobank Group earlier, and then I worked with JP Morgan, and then now I'm running my own consulting. Well, coming back to the topic, So it's a very interesting topic, cybersecurity, and for all the CIOs and CTOs, this is the word, cybersecurity. So I'll not use, I'll try to be very simple in explaining this stuff, and we'll try to use jargons as less as possible. So when we talk about cybersecurity, we are talking about cyber hackers, cyber robbers, right? And what they do. I mean, in other words, what we are also talking about the importance of cybersecurity, the means and the ways to protect our electronic capital. And by electronic capital, we mean our data and information, our clients' data, and any important and information around that. So so now look at this from the psyche of a hacker. So when we look at this, where they want to reach where we store our treasure. Here treasure, we are talking about the electronic capital. So data is stored in servers, and that's where they want to reach so that they can have a feast on our data, right? And now, and also they were trying to come into the path which lead to the data, right? The server. So ultimately, we look at this in a very simple language, in a nutshell. What we are talking about here is we want to protect the place where the data is stored and the way leading to that storage, right? That is our server. Now, coming to the point. Now, so it sounds very simple, right? We have to just protect that place and the path leading to that place, right? The bandwidth or the internet traffic. But that's where the challenge comes. The challenge is the entry points. There are numerous number of entry points, right? Like daily applications are being added, new devices are being added to the systems, right? Different applications have different operating systems, which has shortcomings and vulnerabilities, right? And lot of traffic. The traffic, the users constantly, hitting the system. The users, the bank users, the customers, the new prospective customers. So it's immense, and the time by which we have to look at the logs and respond to it and categorize that whether it's a fraudulent hacking activity or it's a proper business activity, it takes time, and that's where we lose the time. So the quantum of, so talking of all these things, now let's look at the challenges, the key challenges if we talk about, and that too in 2020 with the COVID around the COVID pandemic is around, and work from home is the new normal, right? So the endpoint security is the main thing which the hackers are really targeting, right? And then they are also, the phishing attacks have increased many folds, right? And then we talked about cloud jacking. That is the very, very upcoming thing which they are targeting. People are moving to cloud, and then cloud jacking is started. And very, very important thing, which I think a lot of state has experienced these challenges. The countries have experienced the challenges of this, is IoT devices. So today, whole world is on data. They are getting data from the customers, the people traveling, the traffic, everywhere. There is a data which is being captured through IoT devices, and that's where the hackers are trying into, so that they can directly or indirectly get their way through to the server and to our data, right? So how to control this? And coming off, Paul also spoke about the artificial intelligence. So talking of artificial intelligence, so now one thing is getting solved, which we have seen, is that monitoring, constant monitoring using artificial intelligence is coming up big way. But then, like, it is also unknown. Artificial intelligence is, at this point in time, to greater extent, is unknown. If something feeds into artificial intelligence in their calculation, in their algo, then it's a garbage in, garbage out. Then we are in for a big problem. So looking at all these things, it's going to be very challenging, and it's a very dynamic and changing world. So I think we have to keep improving our infrastructure and keeping the tidiness across the networks, and firewalls and keeping it very difficult. So the real mantra here is not to be the low hanging fruit for the hackers. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pradeep. It was really very informative, where you have discussed the entry points, and also you have discussed that cloud jacking. I believe this is the nice term, and that we will be discussing a bit later in more detail, that what is cloud jacking and how we can prevent ourselves, and also discussing IoT. Now I will invite Mr. Mohamed Roushdy. He is the founder of FinTech Bazar, and he will be discussing his thought on this topic. So Mr. Mohamed Roushdy from FinTech Bazar, he is the founder. Yes, please, over to you.
Thank you, Javed. It's a very interesting topic, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk about this topic. I think I would like to add to my two colleagues. I think they said many very important stuff. I think I need to add something more here. Like the nature of the ecosystem today for finance are changing. This changing ecosystem today become like, we used to be very centralized banking. The banks, they operate by themselves. Today we are moving to what we call the open banking. The distributed fintechs are working with banks. So now it's not only the bank is not trying just only to secure his own infrastructure and systems. There is another third party they have to communicate and talk to. Then it's not only his perimeter and his boundaries become some other people boundaries are always important for him, for the bank, for them. So now we could see this ecosystem changing is bringing much more, challenging to everybody in security mainly, and at the same time, this is like while bringing the opportunity, the digital transformation, speed is going very fast. Everybody would like to do digital transform. Everybody's online 24/7. Everybody would like to be in a blockchain. Everybody would like to be in with R3. Like everybody's trying. All banks are really in a race to make sure that they are really pleasing their customer. They are making sure also they are able to meet the customer demands. And this is bringing more security and more risks involved. The very important part here, the most important things in this dynamics is data really. So you can see many of this, hacking, it become about the data, privacy. We could see many of, incidents happening that people stealing your data, your credentials, your customer, your credit card or debit card is going to be using it. So the data become privacy of the data governance, data stewardship become a major element here. And then the risk-based also security or information security risk-based is very important. Not only trying to really secure the equipment, secure the infrastructure, the core banking, the systems, it becomes the data. Where is the risk will be? Which data elements is very important for us. We have to take care of it. What is the kind of security we have to move to? Like I think the previous presentation was very interesting about the biometric. How can you use biometric? Multi-factor authentication, all of this factor authentication, all of these are very important with this digital transformation speed and digital transformation era and fintech, blockchain, and all the AI. AI is very important today. Hackers use AI to do attacks. We should be using AI also to secure ourselves, not only AI for analytics only. So all of this is very important for today's digital transformation era for banking. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Now what we will do that we will be having some quick questions, and let me check if we have got some question in. Before we go to these chat box, I believe that I will be asking a very important this topic of cloud jacking, right? Which you have mentioned, Mr. Pradeep. Can you further elaborate that what controls a bank should be looking for in order to avoid the cloud jacking?
It's a very, very important question, and it's upcoming. People are working. The banks have started seeing this as one of the challenge, whether it's a private cloud or a public cloud, right? A lot of securities these big cloud infrastructure providers are providing. But it's basically, when we say cloud jacking, is basically it's hijacking your cloud, right? And now the complete infrastructure, how you are sending the data to the cloud, how you are retrieving the data from the cloud, and how the cloud is sending the packets, right? Data packets. That's all needs to be looked at in order to avoid or to control the risk of cloud hijacking. And this is a major risk because what all risk we have in our PC, the similar risks are there, sending of malware, attacks, so the data, when it is going from a bank server to the cloud, the malware can be part of it and can play the spoil sport there, so that is one part. Then sorry for it, there's okay, yeah. So your question was how the banks can control this. So it's going to be a two-way work, one from the cloud infrastructure provider, if it is the external provider. In most of the cases it is. They have their own security systems, and to control the two aspects. One is the attacks directly coming to them, to their infrastructure, or the very, very encrypted malware coming from the bank server to the cloud server. That is very key. And so that needs to be protected from both ends, from the sender and the receiver end. Both end needs to be protected and encrypted. That is one part. And same thing, the bank, as a bank, they also needs to have those firewalls and the basic updates of logs and what all steps we do in ensuring that the cultural aspect and the risk aspect and various aspects. So
Excellent.
basically net is this.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mr. Pradeep. Mr. Paul Williams, do you want to add anything regarding the cloud security and cloud jacking?
Yes, so thanks for that. It's actually great input provided there. And I mean, just to add to that, we're seeing a lot of this happening. When we did a survey with customers about 2 years ago, and a lot of customers, especially the CXOs, basically 90% of them were not in agreement to actually put stuff into the cloud. For the pure reason of security. Now, I think in the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we've seen more maturity around that. But that said, I mean, if you're depending on your service provider to provide security in your cloud, you're horribly wrong. You've got to ensure that you provide your own security in the cloud to actually stop this cloud jacking and this manipulation of the cloud jacking happening as well. Because typically that data belongs to you as a corporate or an organization or a bank, and you're responsible for that data because it's your client's information. So you have to provide the security, no matter if it's web security or if it's firewall security or application security, call it what you want. You have to provide that security because today the likes of Azure, AWS, and those guys are not providing it. It's there to be used, but you have to ensure that you implement it correctly and enforce it correctly. Yes.
That's good. So thanks a lot. Mr. Roushdy, do you want to add something, what we have just discussed, please?
Yes, the cloud is very important and very interesting for financial services. It's new. Not all banks really are going for cloud, but still, some banks start moving to cloud. And it's very important that people start understanding what is the cloud, basics. I think the other important thing here, I would say, most of banks, they have cloud and they have on-prem, and on-prem will be much more than the cloud. Now, securing the whole, the whole ecosystem or the whole system or holistically, it becomes challenging here. And this is one of the most important points for CIOs. How can you, secure your on-prem as well cloud, and the cloud becoming, like a hole in your infrastructure. I think this is something, our colleagues from the vendors, they can even tell us about how can we do that, because I think this is one of the important things we need to think about it. How can we secure on-prem and cloud, especially because banks are very critical about using the cloud.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. The next question is that everyone is now talking about artificial intelligence, right? AI. Yeah. And there is a new term which is being coined, which is known as AI washing. That everyone is saying that, yes, we are AI enabled, we are using AI in the background. So how we can know that, is it AI washing, that people, they're using the word AI to launch their product, or they are really using AI in their product and services? I will start with you, Mr. Paul Williams.
Sorry, there we go. I'm off mute. So thanks very much. So AI washing is almost a thought process. So AI washing today is seen as a process of thought leadership, because I think AI to a lot of organizations is pretty new. A lot of us have obviously developed AI, sometimes from the ground up. Some of us have obviously taken different AI engines and actually then built on top of the AI engines. Some people have taken third-party AI and actually then started manipulating the third-party AI. So again, I think it's, if you talk about AI washing, it's a starting point where you basically want to get the most and the beneficial out of that most AI that you're trying to use as well. And that's the important part. And when I say that, with AI washing, you've also got to think of a lot of things. You've got to think of the workflows, you've got to think of the products themselves, you've got to think of the amount of resourcing and the development coding that has to take place, as well as the resource and the pricing. Because remember that when you start developing these AI environments or this AI network, you have to ensure that you basically get return on investment as well. So you can basically build this great, fantastic system that works, but if it's not going to produce the revenue and obviously pay back the shareholders, I think you've got a problem coming to you. So that's what you have to be careful as well. So a lot of people have sometimes overshot the runway, as you term it in English, but some people have actually done a great job as well. So I think just be careful about how this happens.
Excellent. I like that word, overshot the runway. Yeah, Mr. Pradeep, for AI washing, would you want to say something?
Yeah, okay. AI washing, I mean, AI as such, if we look at, in the top banking firms or the banks who are extensively using AI for that matter, are also very limited. So it's a long way to go. We are just scratching the surface at this point in time. We've started, I think, 8 years back or 7 years back, the chat bot. People started saying we are using AI, right? And then now we are up to writing the algos on that, and now the face recognition mechanism has also come in. To what extent it is being used, and what about the ROI? Still, it's unfolding chapter. But still we are discovering that. So looking at the success and looking at the space we have to go in, and with coming of 5G, once it's full-fledged in, I think the AI will start giving ROI. At this point in time, except the trading, I don't see much of the AI giving ROI to the organization. So yeah, in nutshell, we are just scratching the surface and nothing much at this point in time. But it's a long way to go.
Okay, so thanks a lot. Thanks for sharing this thought that a lot of things are there in the pipeline, and a lot of things regarding AI has to come. Mr. Roushdy, would you want to add anything regarding the AI washing, please?
Yeah, each technology go in a hype cycle, In ways, you go in the hype, you have lots of promises, people come with many things, they use the term a lot. And then, what you have to do here from a CIO, from a banking, is to make sure that you are testing this hypothesis. You make sure that, I'm working, by the way, in another AI, use case now, but this for advanced analytics, for lead management. It's very interesting stuff. Now, what we do here, we compare what is this AI platform will give me with the traditional way I'm using, and I can see am I getting results or not. So you have to make sure that you do proper pilot or testing to make sure that this is really bringing the value, which is a vendor or anybody coming and tell you, okay, I have this one AI can do so and so. We're still here in an early stage, but you will find some kind of algorithm which is really can be beneficial. You cannot just put all eggs in one basket, as people saying. You have to make sure also you are complementing this one with other robust technologies which are in place, which is to make sure that you don't really get breaches because of using something which is really nascent. But it has the future, I would say. But you have to use it with being careful in using something new like the AI in security mainly. But I think it's very promising to use information technology in security mainly.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate. And now, Fahad, I believe that you have got some question in the chat box.
Yes,
we have.
This question actually has two parts. First part, 1A. Is it realistic to say a company is 100% secured? Second part, is there any single unified and integrated solution for security?
Paul Williams, I will ask you to first. I believe that you have got a lot of products. So please help us out.
Yeah. So the first question first. So is your company 100% protected? The answer is no. The reason being is that there's two factors. Is basically it's an ever-changing environment. It's an ever-changing process, and it's an ever-changing governance organization that has to be constructed. And even Fortinet, I mean, as Fortinet can say, we might have products to support you, to help you and support you and protect you. But the other element is the human factor. And, you know, the human factor is still the weak factor in the not protecting your network. So that's the other element that always fails organizations. The second part is, do we provide a unified security platform? The answer is yes, we do. But the nice thing about Fortinet, as you saw my presentation, is we have a huge plethora of eco partners we work with as well. So we work with our competitors. We work with the likes of Cisco. We work with Juniper. We work with HP. And we work with Oracle and all those guys and Microsoft. And the answer is why we know that is because we know that we're not everyone to everything or everything to everyone. And that's why we've actually built this ecosystem where we've built these open APIs, and the APIs basically allow us to talk to these other vendors' equipment and bring the information into our environment, or we can send information from our environment into their environment as well. So that's basically my answer to that question.
So thank you, Mr. Paul Williams. Yes, you are right that human error. So it is being said that there is no fix for the human stupidity, or software would be no fix for human error, right? So that's correct. Now what happened is that I've got only 4 minutes left. So what I will do is, this is basically a last round. And here what I will be asking each of the participants to just give one-liner that what advice you want to give as a takeaway to our audience. So I will start with you, Mr. Paul Williams. I just need a quick one-liner that what kind of message you want to give to the audience as a takeaway. Yes, please.
Thank you. So my takeaway to this, and thank you very much for allowing me to be at the session, is please ensure that when you design the security environment, ensure it like you would design your own house from the foundation upwards. That's my honest one take on it.
Okay, excellent. Now I will request Mr. Pradeep that what is your takeaway, one-liner, a quick one.
Okay, so it's a cybersecurity is a risk, and it should be a part of your risk management strategy, and a lot of budget should be allocated. Enough budget should be allocated to this aspect, because it's going to be too risky in future.
Okay, that's good. So yes, budget and funds, they are really very important. Now I will request Mr. Mohamed Roushdy that what will be your takeaway, just one-liner that where you want people to remember this. Yes, please.
When you design your information security, or you implement information security, make sure it's holistic. It's not only equipment, it's not only application, it is application, equipment, people, third party. Make sure that you have a complete design for all your endpoints from start till end. Not only equipment, not it's people as well. Awareness is very important. Make sure that you have a holistic information security policy and strategy.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So it was that whenever we are talking about cybersecurity, we should be thinking about end-to-end. So I want to thank each and everyone on this panel, Mr. Paul Williams from Fortinet, Mr. Mohamed Roushdy from FinTech Bazar, Mr. Pradeep for your insightful thoughts, and especially those wise advices that you have given to us. And at the end of this session, I want to thank you, everyone.